Another fucking helicopter went by. I swear to God, living in this place, it's always helicopters and planes going directly over the house, and then the whole fucking house shakes. It pisses me off to no end. I had to open all the windows up to air out the place because the air smells so bad I just get fucking dizzy. And I can't breathe that shit in without my chest and my head feeling heavy and being fucking dizzy. So I opened up as many windows as I could, and then this whole fucking house starts shaking because of those planes nearby. You know, I miss the attention span that I used to have. When I was like 17, hell, when I was even like 18, I used to be able to lay down in my bed all day for like 15 hours a day. I'd be awake, and I'd watch these 4-hour videos from No Thank You and from others, and I would do it all in one sitting, rarely pausing, you know, not really checking Twitter or Discord. Maybe I would a little bit, but I always saw it as like a problem. And it's a problem that I've been weirdly insecure about since I was kinda young. Like, I remember being 13 or 14 and watching YouTube videos on my computer in my room. And I was thinking, I have to stare directly at this video, no matter how mundane the footage is, because if I don't, I'll develop ADHD. I seem to have this perception that people in my generation were all over the place just suddenly getting ADHD because of the incentive structures designed in social media. I thought things like infinite scroll and videos that were short in length all provided these quick dopamine hits that were getting us hooked and making us less and less likely to consume long form content. And if we did consume long form content, it would have to be interspersed with these short form hits of dopamine. And I really hated this because a lot of my favorite movies were things like 2001: A Space Odyssey, Goodfellas, these really long epics. I also really liked silent films. I loved Stalker and a lot of the, you know, the more silent movies that had a bit more visual shit going on. A Love and Pop, one of my favorite movies. And this was all stuff I watched in, you know, one sitting. And now I'm capable of doing that if I try really hard. I'm especially capable of doing it if someone I'm in love with is present and I'm like sitting on the couch with them. You know, I need like minimal breaks, if any. But don't worry, I'll give you water after I record this, little guy. Don't worry. Oh, there's water up here. There's just a thing of water right here. Here you go, boy. There you go. No, you know, I need, like, minimal breaks when I'm with someone that I love. That's the weird thing. It's like it gives me more attention. But when I'm just by myself, even if it's something really bombastic with a lot going on, a lot to keep your attention, my attention still gets swayed into another direction somehow. And I get somewhat disappointed with myself when this happens. Nowhere near as disappointed as I used to. Like I said, when I was 13 and 14, I had this narrative ingrained into my head about social media and my generation that I don't even know if it's true. Like, this is just a thing I heard from older people a lot, and I came to believe that this was just a fact of reality. And so I was obsessed with staying off of social media, not having anything to do with it, and like whenever I engaged with it, and especially when I engaged with it for a long period of time, I became like totally fucked in the head. Like I was so guilty about it. I thought I was decimating my attention span. And so I generally stayed off of it, and I wouldn't even listen to YouTube videos, like I said, in the background, because I thought it would destroy my attention span. If I played a video game, I had to play it without music on, or without a podcast on, because I thought it would destroy my attention span. And I remember being in school, and all of the kids that were diagnosed with ADHD, or the kids who just displayed symptoms of ADHD, like, I remember hating them. Like, I literally thought like a fucking fascist. I feel bad now at how, like, genocidal I thought about these people, because I thought they have no concern for, the kids around them. They have no concern for anything or anybody. These people are just, pathetic and self-interested. Why aren't they, more attentive to their surroundings, or anything going on, or what's right or wrong? Do they just not care at all? How dare they, like, I spend all this time caring about all this morals and principles. How dare they not be concerned with it? And when I was seeing them, like, not hold themselves to that sort of standard, I really got to give these guys more water. But when I was seeing these kids not hold themselves to that kind of standard, like, it really felt sickening to me. I don't know how else to describe it other than sickening. And I had, honestly, some pretty eugenicist or, like, genocidal thoughts about these kids growing up. And I'm glad I don't think that way anymore. I think this stuff ultimately comes from, like, a hatred of yourself type thing. Because I was holding myself to really just unrealistic standards as far as, like, having a moral code and being attentive to my surroundings was concerned. You may not see how this ties together, but I think in order to abide by your principles all the time, like, you really have to be attentive of your surroundings. You have to be totally there. You can't just operate on sheer intuition. Not unless you've trained your behavior so well that, like, your behavior just becomes intuition, So I hated kids with ADHD. And one of my biggest fears was becoming like that. And as the years go on, I started drinking when I was like 13, 14, 14, 15, around there. I know I just gave 3 different years. It all kind of blurs together now. It was in that general ballpark. I think it was around 14. And that is going to hinder your brain development if you start drinking at that age. And then when I get around 17, I start drinking a lot. I get to 18, I'm drinking a lot. And I don't drink anymore. But needless to say, I did drink a lot. And that's going to fuck with your attention span over time. It's going to damage your dopamine receptors. When you get off of it, they can repair a little bit, but not entirely. And I imagine that's part of why I have a little more trouble keeping attention or focus. That being said, in comparison to my friends who have ADHD, my attention span is like leaps and bounds better. I think it's still better than most people, but it's not as good as it used to be. Like, my attention span used to be fucking insane. It was like razor sharp. Like, I'm not trying to brag or speak overly high of myself, but my attention span was like literally genius level. I could just stay on one task for so long. Hyperfocus is what they call it. And I can still kind of do that. Like, I still hyperfocus sometimes, but I suppose because I've gotten older and the world is less novel, I don't hyperfocus as often, and I miss the feeling of hyperfocusing. I also just miss casually being able to, like, stare at a 3-hour no thank you video or a Digibro video and not tab over at all, not put it on in the background, not do anything like that, just stare. Just stare right at it. I miss that. I do miss that. And a lot of the time when I'm by myself, because I'm in a chronically understimulating environment, I do struggle to pay attention to movies and things of that nature. I really do have to put in effort. If I get 30 or 40 minutes into a movie, I start jittering and wanting to get on to another topic. I might have to pause or something. And I think, part of the reason why this occurs too is because of anxiety. I have a lot more just baseline anxiety than I used to have. And I would probably blame that on the neurotoxicity of alcohol as well. People don't understand how neurotoxic alcohol is. It it can give you entire like anxiety disorders. Not to say I didn't already have one, but I think the fact that I drank as much as I did for as long as I did probably worsened it, and as well as my attention. So these things are interrelated. And I found that my the less bad my anxiety is, the easier it is to focus. A big whoop. Crazy, crazy conclusion to come to there. And so it might not even be an issue of me having a quote unquote worse attention span. I might not even have that much brain damage. Like, it could be like a negligible amount or not even noticeable in my life. It could just be a matter of me being chronically anxious all the time. And that's why I can't focus for literally hours on a mundane thing the way that I used to. I mean, that would also explain why I can do something like that when I'm with my significant other, because my significant other, greatly reduces my anxiety. So also the reason why I love video games, at least, story-based single-player games, and not so much multiplayer games with like the same maps and stuff. You get used to those, and then you start wanting to put a podcast on or some music on because it becomes difficult to focus on it otherwise. Like, I like single player games that are really intensive to play because I can just get so in the zone that I have no thoughts. I have no thoughts because I'm entirely focused on the act of what I'm doing. I become so immersed in the act of what I'm doing that I forget I'm pressing buttons. I forget I'm holding a controller. I forget that the screen is there. Like, my eyes stay so locked on the screen that I actually forget that there's a rectangle there. But I can only do that with video games now. Sometimes I can do it with the multiplayer stuff, but it's pretty much exclusively with single player. So I guess in comparison to a lot of my friends, I still have a pretty crazy attention span. But I wish it was as good as it used to be. I suppose this is just part of getting older, though. Like, these things lessen over time, or perhaps they get better over time. Everything I've read seems to suggest they get better over time, which is why I began to think that it was neurotoxicity related, or anxiety related, but who fucking knows.